Hey everybody. So thanks for your patience. I know it's taken me a while to get these reports out to you, but they're going to be sent out today, and hopefully this video gives you a bit of an idea on how to interpret them. So when you first open your report, you might see something like this. Obviously, I don't want to give out the name for this person, but you might see that the graph is downward pointing, which can be quite deflating. And you might also see other graphs which are a bit more stagnant, and obviously others which are sort of going up essentially and showing a positive outcome. So a few things to keep in mind and some questions that I wanted to answer from a few of you that hopefully clarifies everything is there's a lot of factors to putting these graphs together. Doesn't necessarily mean you've gotten weaker, doesn't necessarily mean you've gotten stronger, although it's likely that you have actually gotten stronger overall. The first thing is that there's certain date ranges that are in there. And so if you've been away for a particular period during that date range, to say you're on holidays or you may have dealt with an injury of some kind, which means we've had to modify the exercise, it means you would have missed out on essentially doing that exercise. And because the program rotates every 6 weeks, then essentially you're going to have a lot less data, and your data in that particular time might not be your best effort and optimal effort, especially if you've been injured and we've been working on modifications. We won't have any data to put in. So that's a few really important things to keep in mind. You'll obviously, so you'll see the different date ranges, as I mentioned, that are there, and they're all quite different. So just keep that in mind. In terms of the calculations we've used, so yes, a few of those early on for some of you will have actual 1 rep maxes, but for the early group members, if you recall, we've had a lot of issues with those in terms of people being injured and getting hurt, and also not everyone is wanting to push into those really low ranges, which is now why I've essentially made it optional. So for those of you that are working off, for example, 5 or 6 or 10 rep maxes, we can still put these into formulas. So we do use a specific formula. If you want to know exactly what it is, I'm very happy to share it, but I didn't think it would be of much interest. But essentially, some numbers go in there. We get a calculation. It's an estimate. It's not an exact outcome, but it gives us a fairly good idea of physically what you're actually capable of in terms of a 1 repetition max, or how heavy you can lift on that particular movement. So that's also one other thing to keep in mind. In terms of whether we take deloads into account, or obviously you've had 6 weeks of data. We just tend to take your best result out of that 6 week. So, you've had some weeks where you didn't lift as much. Obviously, the reps are higher, but we'll just tend to take your best number. Doesn't matter what it is. And essentially, that's the one that goes into the graph. We've sort of spoken about, obviously, being away, and injuries is a really big one. So a lot of you have gone through different injuries. Most of you where we've needed to make modifications, obviously assist with your rehab. And it means that you weren't able to complete that particular lift, and obviously not optimally as well. So that takes a lot away. And obviously, if the date range is within where you had the injury, well, there you go. And for example, for this particular person, the results we have now are actually much better than what we've had in those sort of early date ranges. So obviously, if we have our sort of September, October, especially the most recent program on the squat, that person has performed much better. And so when the next progress report comes out, you'll be able to see that. But it's still important to keep in mind. It gives us a really good indication of where you have been, what has potentially happened, and what we need to work on. So even if we go to a trap bar, for example, deadlift here, yes, the graph is pretty stagnant, but overall that person has progressed. There's just a lot of anomalies here, which is obviously why we have the straight line. And again, during these particular low weeks here, we may have had either higher reps. That person could have missed the low rep weeks, and so that's all we have. So keep all of that in mind. Obviously, it can be a bit difficult to get as accurate as possible, but overall, we can see that that person has performed well, and obviously, again, with the most recent numbers here that we've got from even the previous 6-week program that had deadlift, we've had a better result. So it doesn't mean that you've gotten weaker. It means it's probably a lot of other factors that play a part. So just keep that in mind. The other thing I just want to mention quickly is, if you are a more advanced member and you've been strength training for a while, your progress is going to be a lot smaller. So it's taken a professional athlete, for example, they're chasing that 1%. Whereas if you're starting out, you're going to see really big milestones and weights going up quite quickly. And then as soon as you get stronger, it's just really those very small milestones. And it is harder to get stronger. So keep in mind, this is not a 7-month or 8-month, which is kind of the day range we have. It's multiple years of sort of consistency. And that's the other thing as well. It's really important. How consistent you've been with your strength training is going to have a really, big implication in terms of how your results come out. So keep all of that in mind. Please don't think that you've necessarily gotten weaker. Overall, I believe all of you have actually gotten stronger to some capacity. Majority of you have gotten over your injuries. Your quality of life is a lot better. You can do a lot more things. So the goal isn't necessarily for the majority of you to just hit as heavy as possible. It's to be able to have a good quality of life with minimal pain and good level of strength so that you can do everything that you need to do if you want to go running, hiking, pick up your kids, whatever it is. So just keep all of that in mind. But nonetheless, having a clear indication of how you've been progressing in general and which movements you're struggling with the most, it's just really going to help us again with future programs. And hopefully, we can continue to give out reports and indicators of where you guys are at, and always open to feedback. Keep in mind, this is the very first progress reports we have made. A lot of work has gone into this. So hopefully you do get something out of it. And yeah, again, we'll obviously try and make the next batch of reports better. And any more questions, please let me know. I'll send the reports out and the video out individually. So hopefully that sort of explains everything and just clarifies everything out. Thank you guys for listening.